The House will come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Gregorio, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Arndt, Bacon, Baisley, Benavidez, Representative Benavidez, Representative Benavidez is excused. Burnett, Byrd, Bockenfeld, Bradfield, Carveo, Carver, Catlin, Cutter, Representative Cutter. Representative Cutter is excused. Doherty, Duran, Escar, Exum, Froelich, Geithner, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Gray, Hanks, Herod, Holtorf, Hooten, Representative Hooten. Representative Hooten is excused. Jackson.
Here.
Judah.
Here.
Kennedy. Representative Kennedy. Representative Kennedy is excused. Kipp. Larson. Montine.
Here.
Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin.
Present.
Michelson Janae.
Present.
Mullica. Representative Mullica. Representative Mullica is excused. Neville. Ortiz. Representative Ortiz is excused. Pelton. Pico. Ransom. Rich. Ricks.
Present.
Roberts. Sandridge. Sirota. Representative Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. Tatone. Valdez 8. Representative Valdez A is excused. Valdez D. Van Weber. Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Williams. Woodrow. Woog. Young. And Mr. Speaker.
With 63 present, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Burnett.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Journal of Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Announcements and introductions. Representative Arndt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it probably doesn't need mentioning, but there will be no Ag Committee upon adjournment today. Thank you.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Finance Committee, we will be meeting upon adjournment today in House Committee Room 0112. So we'll give you about 10 minutes after we gavel out here, and we will be hearing House Bill 1008, 1116, and Senate Bill 65. See you soon.
Any further announcements or introductions? Madam Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, can I have your attention? We're going to go ahead and do a few seconds this morning. Then we will adjourn, or recess. We will recess for committee meetings, and the plan is to be back here this afternoon. We are scheduled for 3 p.m. If for some reason we're able to come back earlier, we will let you know as soon as possible. We're trying to determine that right now to get back and get some more work done so we can get through our long list of seconds today. So I just wanted to kind of give you an outlay of what the day looks like. But on a personal note, I have an announcement I'd like to make as well.
Hold on, Majority Leader Eskar. Everybody, please give Majority Leader Eskar your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am happy to share with this body the exciting news that I am due with my baby in July. Woo! Thank you. It's been a long road, but my wife and I are very excited to be expanding our family. It's a dream we've had for a while, and we've made it there. So I wanted to share the news with you all. So if you see my pregnancy brain kicking in, or I'm a little cranky or short, don't take it personal, please.
Congratulations, Majority Leader Eskar. And if you don't mind me asking, when are you due?
What was that, Mr. Speaker?
When are you due?
I am due July 15th.
That is awesome. Emily and I are due like July 14th, so we have a very similar due dates.
Uh-oh, the Speaker and the Majority Leader are due right next to each other. This could be interesting.
Yeah, well, congratulations. We're all very, very, very excited for you and Heather.
Thank you so much, and thanks for obliging me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other further announcements or introductions? Seeing none, the next order of business is general order, second reading of bills. Representative Tatone. Or Representative, we can take time, whatever you want to do. Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez. How about Representative? Oh, here she comes. Representative Tatone's coming in. All right, Representative Tatone. The next order of business is general orders. Okay, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Tatone will take the chair.
The committee will come to order.
With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for a bill to be read at length. Committee reports are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and in your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon the request of the majority leader, and the cult rule is relaxed. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1045.
House Bill 1045 by Representatives Young and Valdez D., also Senator Fields, concerning the Department of Agriculture's authority to control pests.
Members, please keep it down in the House floor. We're going to second reading. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1045 and no committee.
All right, Representative Valdez, Representative Young to the bill.
I move Amendment L001.
All right, members, Amendment L001 was on your desks yesterday. It is a multi-page amendment, so you should have that available to you. It is probably shown on the screen. Yep. All right, please proceed, Representative Young.
These amendments are a result of work with the Colorado Weed Management Association. With their passage, the Weed Management Association will be in support of the bill. In these amendments, there are clarifications of the definitions of eradicate pests, and plant products, and the insertion of two definitions for local government and quarantine. There are a few cleanup pieces of language. It also adds that the Board of County Commissioners may declare a pest to be a public nuisance and require its control or eradication. There is also an addition that the department will report the amount and source of money received yearly at the SMART Act hearing.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I ask for your support on Amendment L001.
All right, is there any further discussion on Amendment L001? The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L001. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. Amendment L001 is adopted. Any further, Representative Young?
To the bill, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Briefly, what this bill is attempting to address is the increase in destructive non-native pests in the state of Colorado. There have been recent outbreaks of emerald ash borer, Japanese beetles, and that is why I was attracted to this bill representing Greeley, which has been a tree city for 40 years. We want to keep those trees healthy, but there's also implications for the agricultural community because we want to keep these urban pests mitigated and eradicated before they encroach agricultural territory. And unfortunately, prior to this, the Colorado Department of Agriculture had no mechanism to fund and help in urban areas when these pests arrive because there were no producers who usually are the supporter financially of these eradicating these pests. And obviously with the changes of land use and environmental changes, we worry about an increase in these non-native pests.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, the Colorado Department of Agriculture will continue to work collaboratively with local governments and be able to offer alternative funding solutions for high-risk pest and disease mitigation with those pests. And with that, I ask for your support on House Bill 1045.
Is there anyone who wants to be invasive to the bill? Representative Arndt.
I'll get in there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a bill that has been highly discussed and stakeholdered, and I really appreciate the work the sponsors did in between the Ag Committee and today to get the Colorado Weed Management Association in a support position. I think my first year here, a pesticide bill was probably one of the biggest issues. It's always a touchy issue between the environmental balance and really good. Between protecting the environment and helping our ag industry. So I highly support this bill, and I commend the sponsors for their work. Thank you.
Representative Young?
I also wanted to clarify something that came up in committee. Really, this is an effort on the department to address these issues and increase the toolkits that they have to address these issues, and also increase some of the financial responses to that. Right now, if there is a quarantine that affects a producer, if there was a plant pest impacting wheat, the wheat producers would need to request CDA implement quarantine, and they would need to cover the bill for it. This is how the Act has worked since it was adopted many years ago. So these tools to keep plant pests from moving from urban to agricultural areas will hopefully prevent that, but it also provides tools to the producers with the creation of this fund. There are two new funding mechanisms in this bill. One would allow for voluntary cost
Representative Young, just
recovery.
1 second here. Members, it's getting a little loud in the chamber. Can you please tune it down a little bit? I can't hear Representative Young.
That's hard to believe. So the goal with this, one would allow for voluntary cost recovery from local governments. The goal with this is that we have some local governments with the resources to where they can pay to work quarantines and eradicate plant pests. As we said before, that's to reduce the likelihood of these pests moving from the urban environment to the agricultural environment. The second funding mechanism is the emergency cash fund and transfer of extra money. With these funds, the CDA would be able to provide grants that would help offset costs to local governments, individuals, and producer groups.
All right, Representative Holtorf, why don't you plant yourself in front of the mic?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, bill sponsors. Thank you, bill sponsors, for continuing to work on amendments, specifically from those weed control districts. I have been a board member on a soil conservation district in my home county, and I know the importance of these local committees. Although I understand the intent, and there is a lot of goodness in this bill, here are the issues that I would like to raise to the floor and to my fellow colleagues, and I think they're very important, so I'd indulge your attention at this time. In the recess, I went back to House District 64, and I had a county commissioner roundtable. I sat with 9 counties, virtually or in person, following to the best of our ability those COVID-19 restrictions and rules that we have asked for across the state. There was one county that was not present, and that was unfortunate. But here's the message that I heard from every county commissioner. We want more local control. We want the state to empower us so we can serve our constituents who we see every day on Main Street, in the courthouse, in our communities, in our towns, and in the country that surrounds our towns. I asked them for their top 3. Every county had that as number 1 or number 2. So, I never want to forget, and those of you that have been a county commissioner, you probably understand, The state needs to help empower those counties and those county commissioners. Now, this legislation in part does some of that. But my concern, and I would ask the bill sponsors to explain this, my concern in a quarantine, and it was the same in committee, if there is a quarantine, who bears the burden of that cost to eradicate that pest? Be it a two-legged, four-legged, or a little plant that looks so pretty, but when you touch it, it's prickly and pokes you. And it proliferates like a forest fire in the Rocky Mountains as of late. Who bears that cost? Is it the producer? Is it the weed control district? Is it the county? Is it the state? Now, if I had an assurance from the bill sponsors that these funds would go directly to the local level to address the problem without delay, and not put the burden on the producer, that farmer, that didn't ask for this invasive species to come, but it's there, and or that county who's already struggling financially because we're doing so much at the state level to take away their revenue sources. And I don't need to mention again this year that oil and gas severance tax is the largest, one of the largest revenue generators in my rural counties. I don't need to mention that again. But you take that money away. And then how do they address these? How do they allocate and budget? And for those of you that have been county commissioners, you know, you've got to budget. And you don't have a lot of flexibility. And you say, well, how much money does the weed control district get? Well, maybe zero this year because we're out of money because of the restrictions that are imposed upon us from on high, time and time again. So once again, I share large concerns about this top-down approach. The state is going to help. Well, are they going to help? Is the money going to flow, or is there going to be a down-trace burden on producers and weed control districts and counties? And that's my question, Madam Chair. I'd offer that to the bill sponsors for some clarification.
Representative Young.
I want to point out that the commissioners now have the ability in the amendments to quarantine pests. And as I tried to clarify earlier, this is an attempt to reduce the invasion of pests in the agricultural areas by providing mitigation and mechanism to mitigate these pests before they move to the agricultural area. And previously, producers have had to take this responsibility of payment for pest control if there was a quarantine. But this bill provides an additional source of funding through grants, through the cash fund that is being developed.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that response. Another concern that I have is as we build war chests in departments, as we build cash reserves in departments, as we do this, and then offer a grant program, what are the priorities? What are the targets of invasive species? And I suppose the CDA in this case will manage that. With the right leadership, you'll get the right focus and emphasis. But what if that leadership isn't there top down? What if the desire to really help rural Colorado isn't there? What if there's a misunderstanding of how rural Colorado operates and what the impactful things are that when you make decisions here in the state capitol or you make decisions here in Denver in one of these department headquarters? What if they don't really understand the country that they serve and their decisions are misguided? And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is happening. Our desire to understand and listen has been diminished. It is happening in the last several weeks, it has happened, as a matter of fact, and is a very contentious situation. So I'm concerned. I'm genuinely concerned as a rural Colorado legislator that what you tried to do for us will be something that you do to us, and it will not be helpful. And those are not my words. Those are the words of former representative of House District 64, Democrat Wes McKinley. So here we go again. As some of my constituents say, here we go again. So, I believe I'll be a no today on this bill.
Representative Catlin or Representative Valdez? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for continuing to bring the conversation back on, because not only our conservation board in our counties are working to eradicate weeds and making sure that private properties have the communication at the state level too, because we need to make sure that we're in communication from the state all the way down to the local level.
Members, please keep it down in the House chamber. It's getting a little hard to hear. Please continue, Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we need to identify the public nuisance that creates an unacceptable risk of spreading a pest, and coordinate with industries to support local governments to quarantine the control and eradicate invasive pests. So with that, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you too, Representative
Thank you.
Catlin.
Members, I'm here to talk about this pest control bill. The ideas behind it are probably sound. But one of the questions I have is the Ag Department has always been in charge of helping eradicate pests. This is not some new problem that's coming to our state. We've had numerous pests. You know, everything from cockleburs to, what do they call them, murder wasps. There's just better PR about it. More and more people are afraid of it. And the idea of creating a fund outside of what we normally do when we fund the Department of Agriculture seems to me to be taking it too far. If we need to fund Colorado Department of Ag better, then let's do that. Because that goes through the process that we all know about. The other thing that concerns me about this bill is it was brought to our committee, presented, but there were so many questions about it, so many people worried about it, that we had to lay it over so that amendments could be brought to it before it was brought to the floor. We didn't see those amendments in committee. It didn't go through the process that we traditionally use. If we're going to have hearings, let's have hearings. Let's present amendments. Let's argue those amendments, debate them. You sell me, I sell you, we put it on there. We get here this morning, there's an amendment. Pretty good sized. If you don't know what you're looking at, may get something go by you. That's the reason we have committees. The process needs to be followed, particularly in agriculture. Because when we start talking about ag, the people that understand what's going on out there at the edge of the community, out there in nowhere, they know what can be done. They know how it can be done. We need to be talking to the people that we're going to be governing. Otherwise, we're being ruled. This is not a bad bill, it's not a bad idea or any of those things, but the process is falling apart. These committees have experts sitting on them, on both sides of the aisle. We need to use those committees, what we've set them up for. You know, I've gotten texts this morning saying, okay, we can support it. Okay. But that seems coercive, possibly. I'm not accusing anyone of that, but this process needs to be ironed out so that we do these things in committee. This bill still needs work on it. My concerns about that fund with the statement that was made this morning, with any extra money that's left over. Wow, okay. That never happens in my department. That never happens in my farm. That never happens at my house. But evidently, Ag has some ideas about generating extra money. I'm not sure what those are. So, I appreciate the sponsors. Thank you for working on the amendment, taking in the stakeholders. I appreciate that. But this bill seems to have been written for the department more than for the people. And I think we ought to think about that. So this morning on this bill, I will be a no. I want to congratulate the sponsors. They were willing and able. They did the words that they said they would do. And I appreciate that. So it's not anything about you. It's about process. It's about people getting an opportunity to talk, and particularly people who know. Anyway, thank you for your attention. Good day.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you and good morning, Madam Chair. You know, the question how much substantive work a bill needs is a question of one's own judgment, and we're all entitled to have 65 different opinions about that. But as to how the process informs that judgment, members, we have it in the rules that a multi-page amendment is to be distributed in advance, and this amendment was. You know, for new members here, you know, we got this on, they call it the goldenrod paper that came around to our desks yesterday. I would conjecture that maybe it's yellow paper, so it stands out more than all the white paper we usually get on our desks. I believe that we had ample time to look at this. I read it yesterday. I put it in my bill folder. It is part of my file on this bill. The rule here was fully complied with. I do believe that there has been time to see this amendment, amending things on second reading here on the floor as the committee of the whole, in addition to and distinctly from what happens in committee, is part of the legislative process in Colorado. Long has been, long will be, long should be. So again, substantive views on a complex issue, we can all agree to disagree. But what we are doing here is the usual legislative process, and I just want to be clear about that. Thank you.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you too, Representative Soper.
So I'm also going to be a no vote on this bill, but certainly appreciate where the sponsors are at on this. For me, it's more from the perspective of I see a lot of what we're doing here as being very redundant, because in my district I have the insectary, and it was established by the state of Colorado immediately after World War II. And as many of you know, the oriental fruit moth is something that had really become invasive and had been attacking our apple trees, our peach trees, and every single year we certainly have to battle back. And they have developed different biocontrols for us to be able to take on different things, whether it's the tamarisk or even the Russian olive. And in many ways, I feel like this needs to be much more of a localized perspective. And I'm going to use the Russian olive as a good example. We actually have the ability to biocontrol the Russian olive. But because many people on the Front Range choose to use the Russian olive for decoration. Introducing biocontrol would mean that they would lose their decorative Russian olive tree. So that's why it's very important to look to a regional solution, because in western Colorado, it tends to grow along the rivers, much like the tamarisks, and suck up a lot of water. So the ability to use some sort of biocontrol to get rid of it would really help. Yeah, well, then if we could come to an agreement to get rid of the Russian olive, I think all of us would be the happier. I know I certainly would. But that's part of the reason why I'm not in support. I see a lot of elements here that are redundant with what we actually already have, and I see the system that we currently have in place in Colorado as working. And I know the old adage is, if it's not broke, then don't try to fix it. So that's where I stand, but I appreciate the sponsors. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1045? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1045. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. All the ayes have it. House Bill 1045 is adopted. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1061.
House Bill 1061 by Representative Gray, also Senator Hansen, concerning the definition of residential land for the purpose of property tax classification.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move House Bill 1061. I would move House Bill 1061.
All right, to the bill, Representative Gray.
All right, this is the moment you've all been waiting for, because you've all been thinking about residential property tax classification and contiguous parcels this morning. I know you have. It's been in the news recently. No, it hasn't. This bill would clarify that a piece of property is should only be classified as residential property if it actually contains residential improvements. The current status of the law is that if you own multiple contiguous parcels, which are pieces of property that are next to each other, if one of them has a residence, then all of them should be considered residential. And right now, even if they have no residential improvements on them whatsoever, they're classified as residential, and that has tax consequences. That means that the tax bills, your tax bill could be lower, but also means the tax bill for everybody else in your community is higher. So what this would do is clarify that your residential property is only the property that actually serves your residence, and not just vacant land that you happen to own next to that property. It's the most exciting bill of the year. I can sense the tension and excitement building right now. I'm so excited to have you be a part of this, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not an exciting bill. It's an egregious, that's just my opinion. I'm just concerned that some people, this will be a tax hike on them. An egregious tax hike. So that's my concern, so I don't support it. Thank you.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1061? Representative Holtorf.
Madam Chair, I have no objection. And I am as excited and I have a question for the bill sponsor, Representative Gray. If the intent of this bill is what I think it is, I am as excited as you are. And that doesn't happen very often in this chamber. Our levels of excitement oftentimes are bipolar, or diverse and different. Although some of us may be bipolar, I don't know about that. But here's the question for the bill sponsor. So this actually will lower tax, I believe, for those that do not have any residential structures on their property and make them non-residential is in classification. Do I understand this correctly? To the bill sponsor.
Representative Gray.
The questions you'll regret asking. The answer depends on when the non-residential property, when the property that is not part of a residence becomes non-residential property, then how does it get classified? So if it gets classified as vacant property in the state is assessed at the same rate as commercial property, which is actually significantly higher than residential property. That's a 29% assessment rate. However, and this is important for your district, if it's actually classified as agricultural property, that's actually taxed at a lower rate than a residence. So the question becomes, once it's no longer considered residential property, if it's considered vacant property, then the tax rate would be higher. If it's considered agricultural property, if you're in an agricultural area, it would actually be taxed at a lower rate. So all this says is it's not going to be residential if it's not serving a residence. What it gets classified after that depends on the use that it's being put to by the property owner.
Members, could you take your conversation to the side? It's getting a little loud in the chamber. Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, bill sponsor. I thought I was going to have an easy answer, but that's what I get for thinking today. So non-residential, as I understand it, or vacant becomes commercial, so the tax increases. And so my question to the bill sponsor and this chamber is, if property is in an ambiguous classification, because commercial truly in that higher tax rate means there's a commercial use and it is generating commercial revenue, and it actually has the ability to carry that higher tax burden in a healthy economy to generate that revenue to cover that tax. But what I'm concerned, if you're on the edge of town and you've got a vacant lot, and there is a feed store right beside that lot, it's commercial. They're selling feed to horses, cattle, chickens, pigs. In my backyard, a lot of four-legged friends, we call them. But does that mean that vacant lot is commercial and they have that tax rate, although there is no commercial enterprise there? That's the one concern I have. Because I'm excited when the tax burden on citizenry can be reduced. I'm excited we can help lower tax burdens to particularly businesses and enterprises and families. Not that taxation isn't important, but it's the amount of taxation and that burden that concerns me. So I'm going to offer for some additional explanation before I make a decision from the bill sponsor. I'm still excited though, Representative Gray. I haven't lost it yet.
Representative Gray? All right. Representative Arndt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, we heard this bill in committee. It's an excellent bill, and the purpose of the bill is to get property assessed at the value for the use. I can't think of a better bill that brings about more fairness and taxpayer equity, so I'm in strong support of this bill. Thank you.
All right, Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was in finance and heard this bill. I think it's a good bill. It clarifies the definition. It's a good governance bill, and it creates flexibility, and I hope that you will support it. Thank you.
Representative Soper.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I too also rise in support of this bill. To me, anything that reduces the burden on the taxpayer is a good bill to get behind and support. And this does exactly that. To more simply explain what the bill is doing, because I felt like there was some confusion earlier, if you have two parcels of land next to each other, and one has the dwelling house on it, the other one is vacant property. Vacant property is non-residential in Colorado, therefore it goes through the 29% evaluation, which we had this long discussion last year about Gallagher. And let's say that you have a driveway that cuts through that lot. Well, is that part of the residential improvement or not? And it's just been a real challenge for our assessors to be able to engage in the valuation of the property because of that. And this would now treat that as an extension of the a residential improvement, because otherwise, to be able to have the lower rate, which is 7.15%, you would actually have to build a house or a garage or some sort of physical improvement on that property to be able to have the reduction. So it's a good bill. It helps our assessors out. It helps reduce the tax burden for Coloradans, and I'm going to be a yes vote. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on House Bill 1061, Representative Holtorf?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the bill sponsor was sitting down with me and explaining the merits of the bill and the particulars. Here's where I am concerned for those of us in the country. When many of you come to Buffalo Springs Ranch this summer to do our ag tour, you will find that to get to my mother's house and our ranch headquarters, it's a half-mile drive from the county road. Now, that particular acreage is grazed by horses and cattle. And ironically, it falls exactly in this description of 50 or 60 acres. Now, under this rule, what could happen, and I don't think it would happen in Washington County, but if this law passes, it could happen, that acreage could be called residential under this definition. Although there's only 2 houses between my home on the edge of County Road 55 and my mother's home, besides also some trailer homes that we have to provide housing for our ranch hands if they choose not to live in town. So once again, as I stated early this morning, I'm really concerned about that definition. Now, Representative Gray did point out that if we run livestock on there, we can request an ag use. And so I will tell you that does add some level of comfort. But if the county commissioners and if the land use committee say no, then it doesn't matter how many horses or cattle I run on this acreage. I now have a classification that really doesn't meet the intended use, and it raises the tax burden for my family and our family-owned business. So I will tell you I'm less excited as I was earlier, because really, you know, as I said earlier, here we go again. What will this do to my people in House District 64? You may have the best of intentions, I don't know. But I will tell you, I am very concerned that this will not help. And maybe in Representative Soper's district, it's different. You know, maybe we have in the mountains a home that's in the back of the holler there, and you've got a, I don't know, half-mile, 1-mile drive to get there, and they don't own a hoof. They don't own a critter. But they've got quite a beautiful place, and the mountains are beautiful in Colorado, there is no doubt. And maybe that classification would be appropriate. But if they're ranchers, if they're like the people that I represent, and they're running cattle out there, and then the ruling committee or the commissioners at the county courthouse say, nope, doesn't matter how many cattle you run out there, we think the only reason you have cattle is because you don't want to pay property tax on residential property tax rates. So we're going to get more money out of your pocket. I will tell you, I think that's wrong. I think that we need to be able to run our livestock, and I tell people in the country, for those of you that aren't in the business, it doesn't matter if you own 1 head, 10 head, 100 head, 1,000 head. I'll tell you, you have the same burden. You have the same challenges. Because Shorty can get out on the highway, and so could a herd of 100. And it's still ag. And it takes a lot of the same attention. So having said that, I don't know if I don't know if she's taking a picture of me. That's fine, I guess.
No.
Just taking a picture. I didn't know if that followed the decorum of the House. I thought there was some objection to that, but I digress. So, as I was saying, I'm concerned. And at this point, I think I'll be a no. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, too.
I come up and stand in full support of this bill. I heard from my assessors and know about the bill was written as following decisions by the Supreme Court concerning this exact matter. And they don't make the laws, so they had to, we make the laws, so they made a bill, this bill, which aligns with the decisions of those cases. So I've heard from my assessors and obviously involved with writing this bill and wanting this bill, and it's good for my district, and I support it. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on House Bill 1061? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1061. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. The House Bill 1061 is adopted. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1126.
House Bill 1126 by Representatives Hooton and Rich, also Senators Story and Sonnenberg, concerning the Office of the State Architect's authority to execute leases on behalf of the state for privately owned property.
Good morning.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1126. There is no committee report.
All right, to the bill.
Take that? Sure. Do you want?
Representative Hooton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. This bill comes to you from the Capital Development Committee, and it concerns one of the functions of the state architect, and that would be to contract and negotiate leases of private property on behalf of the state. Now, this has been one of the architect's functions for decades. In 2014, when that section of the statute was rewritten, they inadvertently omitted the reauthorization of that role. And so while the architect has continued to function in that role, it has not been in the statute. So what this bill does is just return it to statute where it belongs.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I almost hate to say this. This is a very simple bill, and it is exactly the way Representative Hooton outlined it. It's just a drafting error that we're trying to correct in Colorado statute and asking for an aye vote.
All right, any further discussion on House Bill 1126? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1126. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. House Bill 1126 is adopted. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of Senate Bill 19.
Senate Bill 019 by Senators Colker and Simpson, also Representatives Tipper and Rich, concerning the authority of assessors to mail abbreviated notices of valuation on a postcard for property tax purposes.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 21019.
All right, to the bill, Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill essentially just gives authority to county assessors to issue notices of valuation on note cards, not note cards, postcards, rather than the long form, which is 2 to 3 pages. So it's a cost savings measure. The bill clarifies what information has to be on the notice of valuation. But in some counties, for example, in Jefferson County, it saves about $30,000. It's a good measure, particularly when budgets are tight. And if individuals want more information, they can certainly still contact the county to get it. Thank you very much. And we ask for a yes vote.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is just a cost efficiency, and it's also just an option. The counties don't have to do this if they don't want to. I'm asking for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 19? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 19. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say no. All right, the ayes have it. Senate Bill 19 is adopted. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of Senate Bill 1009.
House Bill 21-10009 by Representative Burnett, also Senator Bridges and Quorum, concerning an update to the statutory provisions governing the functions of the Division of Housing in the Department of Local Affairs to facilitate housing that promotes state goals for local development, and in connection therewith, enabling the Division of Housing to leverage state housing funding to promote the state's affordable housing and energy performance objectives.
Representative Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I apologize. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1009.
All right, to the bill, Representative Burnett.
This is a bipartisan bill. It has no fiscal note and has a near unanimous vote out of committee. As one of our esteemed colleagues often says, it's a good bill. Vote yes on House Bill 1009.
Any further discussion on, yes, Representative Van Winkle?
Okay.
Thank you. And in full disclosure, this bill did pass my committee 10-1. I was the one, of course. Now, and my issue with it overall is that it seems to extend the Department of Housing's mission into new areas and push a lot of the incentives, and the incentives I have some issue with because they don't seem wildly or very clearly defined in the bill. And so anytime I see incentives going out the door, I wonder where they're coming from and where they're going. And it's not clearly defined in the bill, so that was my reason for voting no, because we're taking money, moving it around, and it's not very clear. But I do have an amendment here. Let me make sure. And so I now move Amendment L001 to this House bill and ask for it to be displayed.
All right, Amendment L001 has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Van Winkle, go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And so what the amendment does is, as far as incentives coming in and going out, what this amendment will do is ensure that the incentives going out aren't just focused, because one of my main worries is that it's focusing the Department of Housing into further and further into downtown Denver, not as for the entire state of Colorado, all four corners. So this amendment simply allows and ensures that 50% of those incentives going out will be in rural Colorado, something that is very important to all of us and to all the people of Colorado. So out of respect for rural Colorado, I ask for a yes vote on L001.
Representative Woodrow. Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Esteemed colleagues, this is a good amendment for rural Colorado. And I am a rural legislator, and I am in support of this amendment. Most people may not believe or understand that we have our own housing issues in our small communities across rural Colorado and in my House district. In many cases, my small towns and communities don't have enough homes to house all the people that wish to live there and work there. With this particular amendment, as I understand it, this will help to alleviate that problem across the state and would be very beneficial to my district and those rural districts like mine.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. One of my concerns that I had in committee, although I did support this in committee, I did have some reservations on it, and that is the opportunity cost that is lost when you transfer funds from one point to another. When you're focusing on that, what are the funds going away from? And I think this amendment addresses that concern, and I ask for your support.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here speaking about this amendment. I heard this bill in committee, and I was a yes vote. I'm still a yes vote. But one of the things I'd like to talk about is that rural Colorado seems to get glossed over when we start talking about housing. We have the same problems as you in urban Colorado have. It's availability. It's low wages. In fact, in my district, it's probably wider than it is in some of your districts. Because we're in a situation over there where we don't have the inventory, we don't have moderate income housing, we don't have housing for workers. So hopefully, this amendment would allow some of the dollars from the state to be focused into rural Colorado. The problems are not just in urban corridor. They're all over the state. And I'd like an opportunity to see some of these rural communities start to thrive and flourish the way some of the urban communities are. We're in trouble in rural Colorado. Available housing, available apartments. If you look in the town of Montrose today, there are no rentals available. And that leaves people wanting. That leaves people thinking, we can't live here. We can't move up. We can't do the things we would like to do. We have economic development committees that are out searching for companies to come to our district. But when they start to show up about housing, the decision is made to go somewhere else. This amendment gives western Colorado and urban and rural Colorado out on the East Plains an opportunity to get started. I would urge a yes vote.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also heard this bill in committee, and I appreciate the sponsors bringing it. I supported this bill, but I do believe that this amendment makes this bill even better. And I hope that you will support rural Colorado and vote yes for this amendment.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I stand in strong support of this amendment. The only thing that'd make it better if it was 75% going to rural Colorado, or 80. So, I won't belabor the points because Representative Catlin said them well, but we have the same housing problems over there, and then a lot of it is with the wages and the availability of housing, and then the cost of housing is a deterrent in so many of our rural areas. And if it's rural areas near resort towns, it's even worse. So I support this amendment 100%, and I think it'll help rural Colorado. So thank you.
Representative Burnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We view this bill, this amendment, as an unfriendly amendment. We've done all the stakeholding throughout Colorado, including rural Colorado. Part of this bill is to provide flexibility for local communities throughout Colorado. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, to the representatives from Washington County and Montrose County, I want to say that I very much understand the point that you're making, that issues of lack of accessible housing, lack of affordable housing, lack of enough housing, period, full stop, I know that affects all of the state. 2 years ago, I did a significant housing bill. I stared at a lot of data. We have problems here in Denver and Aurora. We have problems in Pueblo. We have problems in Baca County. We have problems on the West Slope. I know that those are greater in the resort areas in particular. I still believe that this amendment is a little bit out of sync. 2 years ago, a different housing bill that other legislators did specifically sort of overweighted and steered extra money to rural communities. I think this was HB 1322. that Rep. Roberts was some part of.
Representative Weissman,
Can we have
one
some quiet
second,
in here,
please.
please?
Members, it's getting loud in the chamber. Can you please take your conversations off to the side? We're trying to hear people down in the well. Thank you.
Valiant effort, Madam Chair. I'll keep going. Members, that legislation to the tune of tens of millions of dollars was an acknowledgement of the very real, very true challenges in rural Colorado, and it was a little bit more precisely crafted than what we see in front of us. So I think I'm up here, for a couple of reasons. One, I represent a city of nearly 400,000 people, which is one of the most increasingly cost-burdened cities in the entire country, according to national rankings. So I have to advocate for my city and make sure that, as we make sure that rural Colorado is not left out, that we don't miss what's going on in places like Aurora. The other thing I want to point out is that in places, in statute, we have various definitions of what a small county is or a rural county based on population, for example, and I know DOLA knows this very well. If we were to be looking at an amendment that would say something like, let's make sure that small counties, defined however, don't get less than their proportional share of population, I think that's entirely fair. That is truly making sure that rural Colorado is not left out. This is a somewhat arbitrary number that I don't think strikes the right balance between the housing needs in all the different communities in our state. So for that reason, I'm asking for a no vote on L1. Thank you.
Representative Winkle.
Thank you. And I'd be happy to discuss the proper amount that should go to rural Colorado. My worry is that the entire bill is focused on, quote, increasing housing density. That's what the bill's focus seems to be at. And so when you call an amendment that includes rural Colorado unfriendly, it irks me a little bit because I think this body is too often unfriendly to rural Colorado, and here's an opportunity for rural Colorado to get recognized in a piece of legislation that is moving an awful lot of money around. So I ask you for a yes vote.
All right, any further discussion on Amendment L001? See, you got to be down in the well if you're going to make any comment about the amendment, Representative Holtorf. Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you. And I've got a few more thoughts, but I do believe my partner from rural Colorado is coming to the well, and he is almost here.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership. I'll work to be more prompt in the future. I don't know what the right answer is. I will tell you that the concerns that were aired right here will be concerns for my constituents in southeastern Colorado. Because you see, in Trinidad, I have housing issues. In Lamar, I have housing issues. In Crowley, I have housing issues. In Hawley, I have housing issues. In Sugar City, Hasty, Lyman, Hugo, Akron, Otis, Cope, Last Chance, Plattner, and many other towns, I have housing issues. And as you hear me say, ladies and gentlemen, there is a real problem in this state. And I wrote a letter yesterday trying to point out about the growing rural-urban divide. How do we close that divide in this state capital? Do we even have the intention of trying? Do we care to change the trajectory of this state as we grow farther and farther apart? The urban corridor and my city cousins in the eastern and western parts of the state, in our rural and mountain areas, and even in these frontier areas that some people like to refer to. And apparently I live in that part of the state. I would argue that this amendment or any other amendment thereof, any other derivative thereof, which I would offer the bill sponsors to consider. And I'm going to use the word carve out to carve out some guarantee that rural Colorado will not be overlooked in these considerations that we make in this Gold Dome. Because I will tell you, we can talk about it, but actions speak louder than words. In the country where I live, your word is your bond, but your actions close the deal. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, esteemed colleagues. And I still am in support of this or any other derivative that could be brought forward that would show and demonstrate goodwill to the rest of this state.
Any further discussion on Amendment L001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L001. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The amendment is lost. Any further Representative Van Winkle?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I'm very sad to see rural Colorado get left out of this bill, but I do have one more amendment, so I will offer that now. L002. And I move L002 and I ask for it to be displayed.
All right, Amendment L002 has been moved and is displayed. Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you. One of my issues with the bill, not just a mission creep, but the fact that we're focusing the Department of Housing so much on, quote, increasing housing density. So I take, at least in just the research section that the Department of Housing will be doing, they'll be doing new research under this piece of legislation. I take that research and instead of focusing entirely on increasing housing density, which only applies to, a few downtown Denver streets, in my opinion, is it changes it to, quote, it substitutes, quote, in place of increased housing density, housing approaches that will promote economic growth and widespread prosperity throughout the state through the application of competition, consumer choice, and market-based solutions. And then it goes on to include everything else that the performance standards and clean energy and everything that we so often agree upon. So I ask for a yes vote on this. Let's make the focus be not just on increasing high-density housing, but on more market-based solutions.
Representative Burnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We view this as an unfriendly amendment. We love Colorado. We love rural Colorado. This is a value statement about capitalism, not about this bill. Thank you.
Representative Van Winkle.
I'm sorry. I vote no on this amendment.
Thank you. Perhaps it is a value statement about capitalism because we do live in a capitalist country and it is the best free market, created the most amount of wealth for the most amount of people in the history of humanity. So yes, I am a strong supporter of capitalism, and this simply on the research section develops or points out research to economic growth and not just increasing housing density, which in downtown Denver, at least where I come from, it's already quite dense. I'm not sure why we're focusing more of our efforts on that. And as far as the love for rural Colorado, I often hear it from the swell and from the speaker's podium, but rarely do I ever actually see it enacted on opportunities such as on this bill where there was an opportunity and we lost it. Thank you. I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that every rural legislator in this body has been offended by calling these unfriendly amendments. I was going to support this bill, but if you don't care about rural Colorado, I will be a no on this bill.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's Madam Chair. Ms. Representative Pico.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. I am coming out of Colorado Springs. We took a look at transit-oriented development. I am in support of transit-oriented development, but that is only one component of the larger view, and this is that. It puts free market principles into place. It does not preclude transit-oriented development, which is very beneficial. I urge a yes vote. I think this is a very friendly amendment to economic development.
Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really like this amendment. We heard earlier from my neighboring representative about how there's no housing out there. Without the housing, we can have no economic development. In rural Colorado, it's different than here on the Front Range. People aren't just flocking there and bringing their businesses there because we don't have the housing for the people, for them to employ. So I like this bill very much, or this amendment. Vote yes.
Any further discussion on Amendment L001? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Amendment L002. Sorry. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No! The amendment is lost. Any further discussion on House Bill 1009? Seeing no more discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1009. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No! The ayes have it. House Bill 1009 is adopted. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1106 until Monday, March 8th.
All right. On request of the Majority Leader, House Bill 1106 will be laid over until later today.
Monday.
Monday.
Did I say Monday? I'm doing that.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee rise, report progress, and beg leave to sit again later today at 1:30.
All right, you've heard the motion. If there is any objection, seeing none, the committee will rise and report and beg to leave sit again at 1:30, 3 o'clock?
1:30.
1:30.
I'll explain more.
The House will come to order. Mr. Gregorio, please read the report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole reports as follows. It has risen, reports progress, and begs leave to sit again at 1:30 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Gregorio. The committee will sit again at 1:30. So just so everyone knows, we're doing 2 second readings, but it's going to be one committee of the whole report tonight. Okay? So we will sit again as a committee of the whole at 1:30. So that brings us back to any further announcements or introductions. Mr. Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and you all know that I appreciate the decorum of this body, and there was some noise in the back of the room, and I wanted to let folks know that I asked Senator Coleman to leave because he just was making too much noise. Now, I may have also contributed to that, but on second readings, I actually apologized to the body. I was making way too much noise in the back, and that does not help when we're debating in the well. So, understanding, and my apologies to our esteemed colleagues, because guess what? That doesn't help you do your work. So I'm sorry I was making noise, and I will take it off the floor from now on.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. And for all of those who are new, in years past, there were these really ugly foam pads that they had on the wall to help with the acoustics. And our former chief clerk, Marilyn Eddins, restored the chamber to its original stature, and they removed those foam pads, but the acoustics are tough. So especially when you're in the well or you're up here chairing the committee of the whole, it is sometimes hard to hear. So I appreciate that, Minority Leader McKean, and let's all be sensitive to the noise in the chamber, especially when we're doing work. Further announcements and introductions. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee will meet in 15 minutes, so please be there at 10:40 in LSBA to hear House Bills 1137, 1079, 1047, and House Concurrent Resolution 1001.
Thank you, Representative Kennedy. Representative McLaughlin.
Yay! Hello, Education Committee. We're going to be meeting in the old library at adjournment tomorrow. That's Friday for Bills 1125 and 1116. Can't wait to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative McLaughlin. Further announcements and introductions? Seeing none. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, let me just clarify for everyone. Originally, we talked about coming back to the floor at 3 o'clock. With the amazing work of our chairs and the Joint Budget Committee, we've had discussions. They all think they can complete their work earlier than 3 o'clock. So for the good of the chamber, we're going to come back at 1:30 instead of 3 o'clock to try to tackle this, the rest of the second reading calendar. So again, 1:30, we'll be back here on the floor to finish the rest of the second reading calendar. So Mr. Speaker, with that, I move that the House stand in recess until 1:30 later today.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until 1:30.